Hey y'all, before I start this review, I just wanted to point out that I'm not really feeling the best right now. I've been recovering from illness that's been going on. I've been having bronchitis, so I'm sorry if I'm not sounding the best in this review as I am with my other ones. So I've been slowly recovering, but just want to give you guys, I'm still slowly getting back together. Dune is directed by Denis Villeneuve and stars Timothée Chalamet, Jason Momoa, Rebecca Ferguson, and among others. And this is based on Frank Herbert's 1965 novel, the same name, called Dune. And in this story, it deals with, well, I can't. It's hard to really go into detail because it's a very complex plot, but I'll try to explain as best I can. Basically, you have two warring families that come from the two clans of warring parties that are essentially fighting over a substance called the spice that's on this planet called the Arrakis, sorry. And essentially, it deals also with Timothée Chalamet's character Paul, who is also going through a journey of his own in order to find out about this mysterious girl in his dream that's played by Zendaya. That's pretty much the basics, but there's a whole lot more of the plot that I can't really get into detail if I also go into spoilers with, and it's also a very hard movie to really describe the plot of because it's so complex. But to get into some backstory, this is one of those movies that I was really hyped for a while, ever since I heard it come out, because the movie was based on the original book by Frank Herbert, and from what I've heard is that that book actually influenced a whole lot of different science fiction altogether worldwide. It was one of the biggest influences for George Lucas, what he used for Star Wars, and I can see it because there are some things in this movie, and also from what little I've seen of the original 1984 David Lynch's Dune, that I can see the elements that they use for the Star Wars movies for the original trilogy. But with that being said, I've never read the book, so I'm not sure how faithful this is compared to that or the original. And I never really watched the original 1984 version by David Lynch. But I've heard from that version, the original book, the original 84 version, it strays away very far from the book itself. And I think, and also that was also one of those films I heard that got a lot of studio interference that was behind it, and it didn't have David Lynch really getting much of his artistic vision across it. But I've never seen that film, but maybe one of these days I'll check it out. And then I've also heard that they also did a mini-series of Dune from the early 2000s, and then another one called The Children of Dune. I might check those out someday, but I've actually heard those actually follow more closer to the book. Now, with this one going into it, I was really interested because I've really enjoyed the director's work from his previous movies, including Prisoners, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049 especially. And the guy has made like very great films back to back, and he hasn't made one that I've disliked so far. And the cast alone also got me really interested in the way it played out in this whole science fiction level that, really seems like it was going for a very, thought-provoking type of level as far as science fiction. And what's interesting, too, is that the trailers got me really hyped, especially when they were using Pink Floyd's, it was either, I think it was Brain Damage or Eclipse, one of the two. But whichever one of those songs from Dark Side of the Moon, that's my favorite Pink Floyd album, that got me really pumped. And from what I also heard was that in the 70s, they actually wanted to have a version of Dune directed by, I believe his name is Alejandro Jodorowsky. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce his name. But he originally wanted to use Pink Floyd as the composers in his version. I think that would have been awesome had it would have come out in the 70s. But I got me really hyped for that and seeing the trailers for this. And this is a movie that was delayed for so many times that when it finally came out, I was blown away by it. Like, this is definitely one of the best films of the year for me. And I'm glad I finally got a chance to see a movie like this, especially in a big theater at the IMAX and in a crowded theater, no less. And it really makes me really enjoy seeing these kind of movies, these epic scale sci-fi movies, still in theaters still. Now, to get my pros out of the way, well, the cast were fantastic in this. I really enjoyed the performances, especially from Timothy Chalamet and Rebecca Ferguson. I'm not really overly familiar with Timothy Chalamet. I've seen him. I've heard he's good in some like other ones, especially Call Me by Your Name and some things like that. But the only one I've ever really watched him was Hostiles, and I enjoyed him in that one. But he was only having like a minor role in that movie. And with this one, I really got into the way that his character played out with him going on this journey to look for Zendaya's character, and his relationship that he has with Rebecca Ferguson's Lady Jessica, I thought was very great. And they had a lot of great emotional scenes together, and the art that they put him through with him still slowly getting things on his own to be pretty much a soldier, well, not a soldier, but to pretty much be prepared for a war, I thought really worked the way the story went along. And I got to really appreciate the rest of the cast, especially Jason Momoa. I've always liked the guy, especially him playing Aquaman, and he gets to really shine in this, not only doing a lot of cool action scenes, but when he's doing hand-to-hand combat and scenes, but also I liked his banter back and forth with Paul, especially when he's saying certain lines that come out of his mouth that do kind of remind me of Aquaman, but a little bit more toned down, so to speak. But he was definitely a scene stealer, and the rest of the cast are great too. You got Josh Brolin and all them, and you got Javier Bardem. And one of the other ones I really enjoyed was Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron. I thought he was intimidating as shit in this, and I can't wait. I every time he was on screen, I couldn't. I was on the edge. I was like really intimidated by his presence. And the rest of the film, to get my other pros out of the way, like I was so stunned by how beautiful and cutting edge the cinematography in this movie looks. Like the dunes, the locations, a lot of the special effects they use on like the ships. And like they have like an ongoing theme with like these kind of ships they use that are like, they kind of look like dragonflies, and they looked pretty cool the way they were handled. And I don't know if they used CGI with some of the ones, but it looked pretty practical in a lot of the scenes with the special effects. And I really got to enjoy a lot of the way that it had like this whole intergalactic like way that the ships kind of go out, and the way it plays out, it almost kind of way, and this is kind of just a compliment in a way. Some of the way that the production design looks, it does looks like something Ridley Scott would probably do if it was still made in the 70s or even today's day. Like it definitely does look like a Ridley Scott film in a good way. I mean that as a big compliment with the production design, the way that everything looks like that, the way it's, and the way the way that some of the technology goes along with it. And one of my other biggest standouts is definitely the score in this. I really enjoyed Hans Zimmer's score in this. I thought it was definitely one of the best scores of the year. It did have kind of a pro con with this in that some of the dialogue can be a little bit drained out and it's hard to hear when the music is taking place. But maybe that was an intentional thing, because there's a couple points where I think that when the characters are talking and the music's very loud, maybe it was an intention to where we as the audience weren't supposed to hear that until probably after the scene, until it moves to the next scene to hear it. So maybe that was an intentional thing, but I don't know. Maybe it was just something that maybe that was something I just missed over completely. But yeah, I really enjoyed the way that the story went along, and it just added so many layers of where these two families are like coming from, and there's a whole lot of great twists and turns I didn't see coming that I really felt, and it gave me a lot of the edge of my seat in a lot of parts. And I know this is only the first half, and thankfully they're actually moving forward with part 2. I really do want to see how this story continues in part 2 with this, because the way we built up and everything with the journey that's going on with Paul, and a lot of the world building that they've established in part 1, I think has really brought a whole lot of great edge, and it's great to see these kind of stories that are told on a visual level, so to speak. And watching a movie like this, honestly, it kind of makes me want to go and watch the original, not only the original Dune from 1984, but I want to get into watching like other movies eventually that speak on that kind of like visual storytelling, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, finally, or go back and watch Interstellar. That's another one I really enjoyed. That at first, when it first came out, it was a little bit hard to understand, but as it went along, I start to grow with it even more. So that's how I feel with this one, where my other minor con I will say is that it took me a little bit at first to kind of understand the film, just for a little bit. But as it went along, and as the action picked up and everything, I started to really grow into where it was going, and it really made me appreciate it more after I kept watching it. And so, I think this is one of those kind of movies where if I go back and rewatch the first half again, I'll probably really get into like it very growing on to me a whole lot more. And so that I think is actually a compliment to this. So it's kind of hard to really judge this film with it being pretty much a part one of a possibly 2 or 3 movies. I think it's just going to be 2, but with what we have right now so far, I will say it's definitely one of the best films of the year for me. And despite some minor cons I have with the score being trade out and a little bit hard to follow in the opening in the first act, it still really got me a lot. And I definitely, hands down, this is one of the best sci-fi movies I've seen in a while. So with that being said, I'm going to give Dune a phenomenal grade on the Film Freaks meter. And for those of you who've also seen Dune, and also seen the other version from the David Lynch version, and also the other and read the book, and also watched the miniseries and the other works of Dune, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.